There's not a whole lot. Like I said, the statement was made last week. We went on the road and got a big win. It was our first real test, and I mean that because we were down. I mean that because it came down to the end of the game. Things that we've done a great job with of the last couple of years to find ways to win games. We hadn't been put in that situation yet this year, and you knew at some point in time it was going to happen, and we had to go out there and prove it to ourselves. Not that we haven't seen ourselves do it, but that's how you grow as a football team. And I think on the road we grew a lot as a football team Saturday.
Thank you, Coach. We'll go ahead with questions. Chad, you want to lead us off?
Sure. Coach, is it difficult in a situation like this, coming off of that win, to keep guys, to dial guys back in? Or do you have, a group that you feel comfortable with all the leadership and veterans you've got, that it should be, less of an issue?
Well, I don't love the word comfortable because that sometimes means relaxing, but we've got a mature group of guys, and they know what it takes. They're going to be challenged this week, and not just saying that you are always challenged in a game, but you're going to be challenged this week to quit listening to the outside things. You're going to be challenged this week to say, how do we lock in and focus to prepare ourselves to continue to do what we've done? Because if you don't, a lot of bad things happen, and bad things aren't just a loss. Some people think, well, yeah, you're not going to. No, bad things are, guys relax. They stand around piles. Things get rolled up. You get injured. I mean, all kinds of those things happen, whether it's in a game or during the week. If you allow yourself to relax too much, and if you allow yourself to even let your mind drift. So there's a lot of things that are very difficult in this time, but especially with everything else that's going on around.
Coach, this is Mark Narducci, the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's been obviously a rough year for Temple, but one of the positions where they've still been strong at is defensive tackle. I don't know if you've seen on film number 6, Dan Archibald, if he's made any kind of impression on you.
No, he has, and obviously I'm a little bit more on the other side of the football, but it doesn't take long to notice what he has done and the consistency. And I think it's hard when when there's the things that are around you aren't going well, and I don't just mean wins. It makes it really difficult, and I don't know the guy, but obviously he must be a competitive kid that has continued to push through no matter what the situation is.
I know you're concerned with your team, but is there any part of you that can feel a little empathy for Temple, what it's gone through, injuries, COVID, and all this? They've had 6 guys take snaps at quarterback, etc.
Yes, there's no doubt. I mean, we're not robots. If you don't have some empathy, if you don't have some idea of what other people are going through, it's really difficult for you to even to enjoy some of the things that you are having. I mean, let's say we've been there. Obviously this is a different year, and I don't want to compare anything that we've gone through or I've gone through. But I know it can't be. It's difficult for everybody. But when you got at least things on the win column side of things, you give you a chance to create some positive energy. I feel for what is going on, and a lot of things are out of our control, out of coach's control, whether it's injuries or COVID or even who's making a lot of those calls in all those different situations. It's very difficult, and I think I would expect that everybody around the country is aware of what other people are going through.
Thank you.
Sure.
Coach, the way you talked last week, you seemed to have a sense that the UCF game was going to be the toughest test. You played higher-ranked teams. You played teams that have beat UCF. Well, what gave you that sense that obviously ended up being right headed into that one?
Just they're a really good football team. Yes, they've got a few losses, but they matchup-wise make it difficult on us, I think. And going on the road obviously is always a difficult thing. We have not been on the road a lot. And we hadn't been tested, to be honest with you. And I don't mean tested. We've had tough football games. Army was a tough football game. There's no doubt that the SMU was a tough football game. Memphis in the first half is a tough they're tough football games. We just had an ability to, down the stretch when it counts the most, to be in a position where we weren't challenged as much. And I just knew going into that game that no matter what, we were going to be challenged down the stretch. It wasn't, with their firepower, with their strike ability, with the athletes they have on the defensive side of the ball, I knew that was going to be something that maybe we hadn't seen or faced, and not that I didn't believe and know what the maturity of our team would do and how they'd respond, but until you've actually seen it, sometimes you get a little worried.
Coach, we tend to only talk about kickers when they don't play well, but Cole showed up for you Saturday night. You talked a little bit about him after the game, but just how proud of you of how he stepped up, particularly how he played, 2 years ago at that place.
Yeah, I think that's the most impressive thing. He hasn't been challenged as well this year, and we've been so good in the red zone offensively. Coach Denbrock and those guys, Dez, and we haven't had any critical kicks, and we haven't had any, even longer kicks probably. And it's not always the length; it's the pressure that's on them based on the situation. And what happened there a couple years ago, probably like a lot of things, is a very low point for his kicking career in college. But if you use them in the right ways, they really make you a lot better. And that's the way I've always looked at all the failures that I've had or the really difficult situations. And you really test yourself when you got an opportunity to go back into some of those situations again. And I tell you what, he did a phenomenal job with obviously everything that mattered for that game, but also going back into a place that probably was as difficult and as low in college as he's had.
Sticking on special teams, Montgomery's been really sure-handed back there as a punt returner. What do you tell a kid when he obviously has a pretty rough start with those first 2 punts?
Well, I heard,
keep him comfortable.
Coach Mace was already talking with him. After he talked to him, I went over there. I heard Coach Mace tell him that, hey, you're the best in the country. You really are. Just don't lose your confidence. We're not like we're going to move you. We're not going to take you. Just go back in there and continue to do what you do. And and then he went back in there and he dropped the next one, but. It was a tough situation, and but you got confidence. I mean, he did it all last year as a true freshman, never put a ball on the ground. Tough situation right there, but he responded really well. We didn't lose faith in him. It's not like you put somebody else back there because there's a trust factor on both sides. That he trusts us that we know what he can do, and we trust him. We know what he can do as well.
Going back over the tape. How important was Justin Harris in getting on that second one and keeping them from having a chance to go up 21-3 in the first?
Huge. I mean, and it wasn't like he just happened to be there. It was pretty much simultaneously 2 guys for the ball. And when 2 guys have the ball at the same time, whoever has the greatest will to get it is going to be the one that comes out with it. And it wasn't one of those situations where it just popped to him and he dove on it and made a heads-up play. No, he made a heads-up play, but he also had to fight for it. And that is a huge play that, like you said, sometimes goes a lot unnoticed based on what the situation of the game was.
Can you describe the quality of the American as a whole this year and maybe how it compares to some of the last few seasons?
I mean, I can compare it obviously in the last few seasons. I think we've been a really good conference, but to where a lot of the really high-level teams are, I mean, in a lot of ways, it had been just you'd seen a lot of really good quarterbacks and wide receivers and offenses, and I think what you're seeing is a good mixture now, which, like I say about our team, the only way you got a chance to really, make a statement or be, nationally known is you got to be able to play all 3 phases of the game. And I think sometimes that is what makes it a little bit more difficult for our league. You get labeled as, hey, it's an offensive league, and they're going to sling the ball around, and, they're just going to do this. And then once all of a sudden you start to get noticed for the play and the competitiveness, and it's not just about offense. It's really about the ability to play in all 3 phases of the game. I think it really takes your team, but even your conference to another level, and I think that's what is different maybe than even the first year when I was in the conference.
Luke, what would you consider good news tonight when the playoff rankings are revealed for the first time?
I forgot that was going on tonight. I don't know. I couldn't define what good news would be, because in a lot of ways I don't. If it's not what our kids expect, then to me that just makes you a little bit more inside and grows that chip a little bit and helps you kind of lock in and focus if this is really what you want to do. So in some ways I'm good with things that aren't exactly the way everybody wants them, because we still got a ways to go, and there's nothing that can motivate you and make you hungrier than when you think you deserve something and you're not getting it. You find out what you're really made of.
will you have to
Regardless of
remind?
look, wherever you fall tonight, you still will likely be the highest ranked non-power five, group of five, whatever we want to call a team in the history of this playoff rankings. What does that mean when you think about that, especially how far you've come since December of 2016?
It doesn't allow you guys to, I think they can use it in recruiting. You guys can use it. Our alumni hopefully are excited about it, but until it's the end of the season, until you get to that end mark as a coach and as a program, I don't know that it can mean a whole lot to you. I'm not saying we won't use it, and it's not exciting, but in a lot of ways, it's just another kind of thing to hopefully help all of us motivate and focus and lock into where we really want to be.
Luke, will you watch?
No,
No interest.
I don't. I have no idea. I think we have a radio show, right? So unfortunately, we will have a radio show, which Dan will probably inform me based on whatever happens or whatever is said. But if I was at home, I wouldn't even allow my kids to watch. I would turn that off. Now they might go upstairs or go someplace else and watch, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't be on in my home where I am, at least.
What do you watch?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Something that mindless can take my mind off of football maybe for 10 or 15 minutes, but that would not. So I would not be watching.
So will you have to remind the kids much about the last trip to Philly, or do you think they remember pretty well what happened up there?
That's a good point. You know what? And probably do. It's not hard to just throw on the last, 20 seconds of leaving the field and, how it looked and what it felt like. But that's a good point. That's not something that I thought a whole lot about to this point, just because of all the other stuff that's going on. But we got enough guys. Like I said, the great thing is the maturity that the fourth and fifth year guys that we've got that have been through the real struggles. It really helps us.
Luke, when you were when you were an assistant coach, when you were a fan, a player, whatever, did you pay attention to the polls at that time?
No, not really. I was fortunate enough to be in a place where you were a lot of times in a good position, and as for me, I don't like that, because I think sometimes it makes you relax a little bit until it's all said and done. But I mean, I'm not naive. I know our kids enjoy it, and it is a really good thing. You actually have to be, as a head coach, a little bit more cognizant of it because of all the things that you use it for in promoting your program and recruiting and things like that. And also, you always got to be more aware of the entire, grasp of your entire team. So I don't watch, but I will be more informed as a head coach than I was as an assistant or as a player.
There was some confusion among teams playing in Pennsylvania last week about whether they had to wear face coverings during the game and all that kind of stuff. Has that come up at all? Have you got any clarification on that on your guys' end?
No, I mean we wear face coverings. I mean, if we're not in the game.
It was during the game. That was kind of what the discussion
Oh, really?
was about.
No, I had no. We normally on Wednesday we get a little more of an update on any situations. We first and foremost think about our travel and anything that's going to be affected differently. Had not heard much about actual game situations.
Anything else for Coach?
Yeah, Coach. I saw you last night. I think it was last night with Scott Van Pelt. I saw a
Oh.
clip. Was it last night?
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay. We've seen you doing more and more of this kind of stuff nationally. Is that conscious on your end to try to get your voice out, try to get your team out in front of people so more people pay attention to what you're doing, or is that something that Ryan's just making you do?
Ryan's making me do it. I know it's a good thing for our program. I mean, look, we're not like the greatest coaches in the world now, and then 4 years ago we were the dumbest coaches in the world. I mean, it takes development, it takes players to do what you want to do, and when it's like I said, now I'm a little bit more cognizant of all the things that are going on. Whether I don't watch the polls and the rankings and the shows, but you got to be much more cognizant because of the entire scope of your program and what you need to do. When you're assistant coach, when you're a defensive coordinator, you could do a lot more better job just kind of focusing in, locking in, not worrying about the big picture, because that's more the head coach's job in the promotion of the program, and even the recruiting side of things. So I don't enjoy it, I would say that, but yeah, Ryan makes me do it.
Do you have to sell the program, do you think, to get yourself noticed more by the playoff committee?
No, that's not in my nature. And every time they ask me, hey, you statement. No, our statements have got to be how we play the game. Every coach is a little bit different. I've been with guys that are very vocal about it, and then there's others that are different. I think it's by nature to who you are, and I'm not saying one's the right way. It's kind of like dealing with officials. Is it better to yell and scream and work them, or is it better to just be able to have some conversation with them? Some would say difference of opinions, but I think it comes down to being comfortable with who you are.